Get it. Oh, oh, we went to the conference.
Right? I'm trying to learn how to turn this off because I'm broadcasting from a different
I'm
way
dancing.
today.
I'm dancing. Oh, you guys got the extended version. That's what we've been talking about from the conference, how we let it play a little bit longer. That's what happens when you listen to episode 96, okay?
Or when Christine's traveling and not at her home command center.
Oh, listen, multiple things at the same time. That's what we do, right? How do we do
Oh
it?
my goodness. Hello, my friend. So grateful to see you and be with you
Super.
today. How are
Yes.
you?
Super grateful to be here. Super excited to have this conversation. When I say right on time, before the holidays, and we talked about all the stuff that's going on outside of just the holidays, but I'm super happy to help people in 5 minutes. How do you get that happiness? How do you deal with that grief? If you know the title of our episode, you know a little bit about what we're talking about, but we'll delve more into it. But I think it's right on time.
Oh, for me, it is beyond on time. When I looked at our guest today, I was like, "Oh, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
universe. Thank you,
right?
God, goddess, whoever you want to call upon. I am
Yes.
grateful to have experts showing up in the studio that are going to help us with
Yeah,
our wellness. We're talking about spiritual wellness today, but I also feel like it's really a lot about emotional and mental wellness. So,
absolutely.
yeah. I
Yeah.
am I am grateful. Should we do our official introduction and
Yeah.
then kick over to what's going on in the world and with us?
Yeah, let's do it. Hi, ladies. I am Shannon Mitchell, a Black millennial entrepreneur, Amazon bestselling author, the founder of Shalo Glow, an all natural handmade personal products company that helps people glow from head to toe. I am your champion for natural self care, business care, and intentional wellness.
Hey, y'all, I'm Christine Gotro, a white social justice advocate, an international speaker, coach, Amazon bestselling author, and dancing social worker who helps you upgrade yourself and community care.
Yes, together we are Women Connected in Wisdom, a podcast grounded in the eight dimensions of wellness.
Yeah, and we like to get together every week for intentional conversations about how to be wise in business relationships. And, how do we do this? How do
Yeah,
we do this thing called life that's chaotic, that's hard, that often brings grief and loss?
yeah,
Since the last time we've been together, for our listeners, I had to hop an emergency flight to Texas to be with my
yeah.
dad who had a major nasty fall and has been in the hospital and two surgeries and all kinds of things. And,
Mm.
the uncertainness of if he was going to make it through and just not in the calendar, like
Yeah.
what? And I want to give a shout out to our community. I want to give a shout out to our Monday Manifesting group. I have
Yes.
so many people behind the scenes that are holding me up that it is just incredible. And,
Yeah.
I believe in community and connections.
Yeah.
And to be able to do my practices and have my folks and it's such a gift. It's such a gift in a time of chaos and just unimaginable things. So
Yeah. Of course. And you do so much for us. What we always knew about you, even before we started Women Connected in Wisdom, is that you're a connector. Christine here's an idea. Oh, I need a tablecloth for my market. Oh, I saw a sale. I can send you a link. I can send you somebody's phone number. And that's what you do. So it's absolutely an honor to be able to text you some love real quick because
yeah,
you've been doing a great job. And when you got to go at the drop of a hat, you were able to take care of it, and that's
right.
why all of the dimensions are important.
Right? Well, and to be practicing what we preach, right?
Yeah.
I think we've mentioned it on the show before, but I
Mm.
do this really fun app called Pikmin Bloom. It's a
Yeah.
Nintendo game that my
Mhm.
youngest, who's in college, introduced me to. And it's
Mm.
this fun game that you have on your phone. And I think they have it on Nintendo and stuff. I don't know. I don't do that
Mm.
part, but where you count your steps and
Yeah.
wherever you go, you plant flowers and you get rewards for walking and finding, and you get electronic postcards from the way you go. So I
Mm.
always use it as a fun way to track my steps. And so one of my practices has been when I've been in the hospital a lot the last 4 days with my dad is
Yeah.
I'll go out for a walk and I'll walk the hospital, or I'll go, if the weather's cooperating, I'll go outside. And and I also am using it to communicate with my family, because I let them, I send them electronic postcard from someplace that I haven't been, or fun things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is just doing those practices, because people have checked in and are like, "How are you?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"I'm well."
Yeah.
Because I'm sleeping, I'm eating well, taking deep breaths. And when I do get overwhelmed, like you and I today talking before the show,
Yeah.
when I get overwhelmed, I have tools and people to process with. And
Absolutely.
one of the things that overwhelmed me, you and I talked about it before the show, but I really want to bring it to folks' attention, because this time of year, it is not uncommon for suicide rates to go up. And
Yeah.
learning of the death of Twitch today just took me out. Like,
Yeah.
I have been a fan for years,
Yeah. Me
and
too.
to hear that we have lost such a bright light at 40
Mm.
years old just
Hmm.
breaks my heart.
Yeah.
And we know the intersectionality of racism and black men and suicide, and we don't know the details, because it was
Right.
just announced and we don't know
Yeah.
why or what. But I don't care really about the why. It just hurts my heart, and I want to let people know, if you're listening, that you're not alone. That we will put the suicide crisis hotline in our show notes, and know that there is one, and you can Google it and you can reach out. And
Yeah.
that we want to be connected with you. And if you are having suicidal ideation or thoughts, that you don't have to do this alone, to reach out and get support, because you're loved. I was, oh, I think I lost you. Um, are you still hearing me, Shannon? Okay, great, thanks. So today, when I was touring skilled nursing facilities for my dad, because his injury is severe enough that he won't be able to come right home, he has to go to a rehab center, which is such a hard thing to go shopping for as a daughter. As one of the first facilities I was going to, you'll love this, Shannon, because I look for affirmation, I look for encouragement and support. And there was this intermediate school that was across the street, and on their marquee, it just had very simply the words, "You are loved." And I was like, "Whoo, I needed that today." I needed that in the midst of what's happening in our world and in our lives. So, yeah,
Uh,
not to be a bummer.
no. And I mean, but that is why if you guys have the book, right? You listen to the podcast, you know that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
Sharing the trials and the triumphs. So I was looking at our goals. I was at the beginning of my planner, looking at the 2022 goals that I had, and I had New York Times bestseller. Let me see if I can show it. New York
all
Times
right.
bestseller and Amazon number 1. Okay,
You
maybe you
had it.
can't see it because
I
of the
can't
light.
really see it. Oh, there
Okay,
you
there we
go.
go.
Okay.
So it had both on there, right? And we hit one of them, didn't
Whoop
hit the
whoop.
other one, right?
Not
But
yet.
in Not yet, right? But in the
Doesn't
midst
mean
of
it
that,
hadn't happened.
there's still other things in the midst of that, right? So when
Mhm.
somebody sees on Instagram Shannon looking good in a bright green dress with my Amazon bestseller, it can be like, well, oh, her body is this and all this stuff. She's here professionally out, and the thief of comparison is the thief of joy, right? So it can look like a certain way, but it's important to share the whole story, because if you
Right.
aren't able to hold all of it, we might not get to the end. And realistically, this stuff is throughout the journey that we're talking about. So that's why I love when you remind us of that app. I think I might need to get it, because
Right.
it's about, when we talk about spiritual wellness, right? That's our topic today. I think about how I leave people, trying to leave people in places better than I found them. And that's what sowing the seeds and the flowers growing on
Right.
that
And
app
planting
always
flowers
reminds me
wherever you
of.
go, and you
Yeah.
get credit for planting flowers.
Exactly, exactly. Because in
Right.
life, you really do get credit, right? Now, the difference is you might not get it where you send it out, right? That person that you help might not be
Right.
the same person that helps you in the same capacity that you help them. That makes sense. But I genuinely do believe that it comes back in other ways. And I'm able to operate in that because of my spiritual wellness, operate from a place of being loved when, as you can see, whether it's anybody in the country, really your friends, your business partners, the people you have around you, it can have you in situations that you didn't expect to be in if you were there for support. It can look different ways. And so then it brings me back to us as individuals. Do we have everything we need, to stay at a healthy place and to process the things that happen? So I'm super excited to get into our conversation and give us some actionable tools. And how do we do that in 5 minutes? Happiness sometimes seems out of reach or unrealistic, or people say you shouldn't
Right?
shoot for happiness, but it's still an option on the list of emotions. So let's delve a little bit
Right?
deeper into
I
it.
love that. Will you
Yeah,
read for our guest our spiritual wellness definition before I pull
absolutely.
our guest up here?
No problem. So, spiritual wellness allows us to be in tune with our spiritual selves. This realm of wellness lets us find meaning in life events and define our own individual purpose. It can be defined through various factors, including religious faith, values, ethics, and morals. Regardless of whether you believe in a particular religious faith, there is always something to be learned about how you see yourself in the world.
Mm, boy, isn't
Yeah.
that the truth? I
And
was just having a conversation with a colleague about the Enneagram. We'll put a link to that. And we were talking about human design, and there's so many different ways to see yourself. And
mhm,
then in the spiritual dimensions too. But
mhm.
if you're ready,
Yeah.
did you want to say anything about that definition before I read our guest bio?
No, nope. I would love to have the conversation with all of us on the stage.
All right, let's do it, y'all. I am excited to introduce you to our guest today. Dr. Peggy DeLong is known as the gratitude psychologist. She
Mm,
teaches people how to harness the power of gratitude and joy to live their best lives, especially through difficult times. She does this through psychotherapy, her group program for widows for healing grief, Heal, with capital HEAL, her online monthly membership, Feeling Good with Dr. Peggy, online courses, speaking engagements, books, and bracelets. Peggy is the author of I Can See Clearly Now, a memoir about love, grief, and gratitude. The Gratitude Journal, a 365-day gratitude journal, and Feeling Good, 35 proven ways to happiness, even during tough times. She is also the owner of Love, Love, capital, in a bracelet, where she designs bracelets for coping with grief and loss, mental health, and inspiration. She hosts women's hiking events for spiritual growth and personal development. Don't you just want to hang out with her? Like,
yeah,
let's go hiking. When she's not
right?
focused on her businesses, you'll find Peggy with her husband and 3 children in the mountains, downhill or telemark skiing, kayaking, hiking, or mountain biking. So,
Mhm.
y'all, welcome to our stage and show, Dr. Peggy DeLong. Welcome.
Hi, Peggy.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Of
Oh, we are
course.
so delighted. And like we were talking about in the intro, like just such timeliness for you being talking about gratitude and happiness in the midst of tough times. So,
Yes.
Yes, well, I always say gratitude is most powerful during difficult times. So don't wait for your good days to practice gratitude. It's most powerful on our difficult days when we need it the most.
I agree. When Shannon mentioned that about Instagram, our Instagram lives, I was like, oh, I haven't even posted. I haven't even been paying attention. And the last thing I posted was a gratitude shout out because I had
Mm,
the only flight I could get when I had to hop an emergency flight was it took me through Nashville. Which I rarely do layovers because, you plan not to do layovers, but this was
right.
unplanned. So I'm in the Nashville airport and I had about an hour layover and I'm walking to my next gate, and there were these two ladies that were at Old Red, Blake Shelton's restaurant. I didn't even know he had one in the Nashville airport, singing live music. I want to give them a shout out because they were phenomenal. Paige McKenzie and Emily Ortega. And they just made my whole day. And I just got to sit there and listen to them for about 30, 45 minutes. And I was like, okay, thank you. Like, that was the little bit of silver lining I needed in this day. So, yeah, yes to practicing gratitude. Peggy, how did you get into this? Like, you've written 3 books, you have this whole business. What put you on this path?
Tragedy. It took tragedy in my life to discover the power of gratitude. I was an ungrateful child. I was an ungrateful young adult. It really took something terrible happening in my life to discover the power of gratitude. And that was in 1994. The year started off great. I had applied to graduate school. I had 6 interviews for a doctoral program, and I was engaged for 3 months, and life was good until suddenly it wasn't. What appeared almost literally overnight, my fiance developed a lump on the side of his neck. And when he showed it to me in the morning, I just knew it was bad. I had a premonition that I would be living my life without him. And sadly, 7 months later, he passed away. He was only 27. And it was during the last 42 days of his life, when the doctors said that there was nothing left that they could do for him and that he was going to die, that I discovered the power of gratitude through a simple cup of hazelnut coffee. When everything was so unpredictable, I didn't know what doctors were going to come by. I didn't know if he'd be able to open his eyes and look at me that day. I didn't know if he'd be able to speak my name that day. I didn't know if he was going to die that day. Every day was so incredibly unpredictable. But the one thing that was predictable was that I could get myself a cup of hazelnut coffee. And I was 26 at the time. I had no idea that what I was doing was practicing gratitude. Only in hindsight did it all make sense to me and why it brought me so much comfort. And the aroma permeated his hospital room and just made it seem less sterile. It reminded me of being home with my mother. That's when I started drinking hazelnut coffee, my senior year in high school, starting my day with my mother. Um, I would wrap my hands around the plastic or styrofoam cup, and it just brought me so much comfort. All of the guests would leave at 8 p.m., and I was allowed to stay, and I would just write in my journal and sip my coffee, and it just made me feel better. And those were the worst days of my life. And it was such a simple thing, hazelnut coffee. So it really has become my mission to help people learn ways to practice gratitude that are accessible at any minute, and there is always something to be grateful for. Even in on our very worst days, there's something, and when we can find it, we do feel better. And then brain science, then the way our brains work, that kicks in and makes it more powerful, by our brain doing its job and helping us to become more positive thinkers. But it starts with intention, and then when practiced regularly, our brain does the work for us.
Absolutely. And I think about it like, because again, having a degree in psychology, I'm really intentional about not over, what is the word when you make it too technical and so it doesn't make sense to the people who have not had all the specific logic verb. What is the
Yeah,
name
like
of that?
psychological jargon.
Yeah, exactly. Like every
Mhm,
industry has jargon, right? So
mhm.
when I think about it, I think about being positive is like building a road in your mind, right? And if you go here more often, then you can go quicker and you don't need GPS anymore because you're used to going this way. But if you always go the negative way, then your mind is going to know how to go there, you know? So I love what you're saying about how it makes it easier to do it. And for me, holding on to gratitude on the difficult days is also part of the sorting and separating that we talk about with Christine's first book, Still Point, right? And we talk about with self care, this is mine and this is not. And when we talk about grief and the things that we cannot control and how we thought it was going to be and what we see for ourselves, a lot of times my spiritual wellness is what helps me stay centered and I say, okay, well, what am I grateful for, right? What is the good in these situations? And because we also work to not make it materialistic, right? I heard you say that the hazelnut coffee wasn't just hazelnut coffee, it was me with my mom. It was me warming up the room and it didn't smell like the hospital. It smelled like somewhere that I loved being and had these moments, you know, you were sparking joy for yourself. And even those opportunities or those memories, you may not have been able to create for yourself. So, for me, being able to take what I'm sad about or grieving over out of the forefront of my mind and remember that, hey, there's both the grief and the gratitude makes it realistic for me to keep moving forward.
And that's what it's about, moving forward. And I always like to mention that when I'm talking about gratitude, it's never never to meant to ignore pain, because our pain is there for a reason. We need to feel it and process it. When we don't feel it, we also unwittingly shut ourselves off to joy. Gratitude is one way to not get stuck in that grief and to move forward, but only after we have allowed ourselves to feel. One of my favorite phrases is, we can't heal what we don't feel. So if we're not feeling grief, we're simply just becoming numb, and that's not helpful. But gratitude is one way to not get stuck in that overwhelming grief, to move forward by choosing to think about something positive. So simple, but then over the course of time, when you do it on a regular basis, just like you talked about with the road, you don't need that GPS anymore. And I love that now we have technology in brain science to see what you, as specifically the functional MRIs that look at the brain and see new neural pathways being formed when we practice gratitude. So it's not just people saying, I feel good, this made me feel good. We can see it in the brain.
Absolutely. So I would love to go deeper into that. I know on your website I was looking and it was talking about, um, again, you just hit on it. Why processing your painful emotions is key to happiness. Could you tell us more?
Yes, yes, because when we don't, well, first of all, I always like to say there's no such thing as a negative emotion, because when we label it so, it makes us want to ignore it, repress it, not feel it. When happiness involves feeling and processing our pain, because when we don't, what happens is we become emotionally numb, and then we don't get to experience the fullness of joy. Everything feels numb. I like to think of it like an analogy of general anesthesia. If you're having surgery, you don't, and you need general anesthesia, you don't get to pick and choose what body parts go numb. All of you goes numb. And the same thing happens with emotional numbing. When we numb ourselves off to pain, disappointment, betrayal, then we also don't get to feel the fullness of joy. We become numb. So that's why it's so important that we allow ourselves to feel pain. But it's important to know and to have some tools so that you don't get stuck there, because then it can be terrifying, especially when you've had it in the past and it just felt awful and you didn't have the tools. It can be really scary. But knowing what to do can make all the difference in the world. And in my experience in 30 years of working in mental health, I have never found anything as powerful as gratitude, because it works in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning when no one else is available. It works on your worst day when you feel that you have no more money, time, anything left. There always is something. So it's accessible at any time, to anybody, and it feels good in the moment. And then when you practice it regularly, it has long-term benefits for mental health.
Absolutely. And, we have experts, again, it's episode 96. So we have experts shared their wellness, self care practices. What do you do to make your work sustainable? And almost hands down, people say gratitude, journaling. I have to have that time with myself just to process it, right? So when we talk about 5 minutes a day, can you tell us what can I do? This person made me upset, and I'm grieving my expectation, right? What I thought this relationship was going to be like. What can I do in 5 minutes to reconnect me to that happiness that I might be looking for?
Yeah, I've come up with with 5 exercises that take people from the first seconds upon awakening until the last minutes of the day when the head hits the pillow and trying to fall asleep. And doing all 5 doesn't need to take any more than 5 minutes a day. And the first exercise is simply to say the words thank you upon awakening. And this has often been referred to as the Wayne Dyer technique. I think he started this. So I'd love to give him credit. I adore Wayne Dyer. We share the same book title. I can see clearly now. He's great. But he talked about just the power of those 2 words. We don't even need to be thinking about what we're thankful for. It's just through the power of language, because when we say those words, they're associated with positivity. We thank people for nice things. We don't thank people for crummy things. So automatically the brain goes to the positive and gets a dose of serotonin, and that makes us feel good. And it's like priming ourselves for a better day.
I also think about the embodiment of that when you're starting your day and now, I would encourage people, I'm curious, are you encouraging people to say it out loud,
Yes.
or Okay,
Yes.
because that
Yes.
was what I was thinking when you said that. I wanted to just be clear. Like the saying it out loud and the breath of it and the hearing of it and engaging all your senses, that's a piece of embodiment that's different from just thinking it. So I love that, Peggy. Thank you.
Yes, and it seems so simple, but it really is powerful because for many people, those first moments upon wakening, especially if you have something heavy going on in your life, it can feel just so crushing that you don't even want to get out of bed. And just saying those two words can shift it just enough. So two things are happening actually. So you're preventing that negative spiral from happening and going out of control that makes you want to stay in bed, and you are just shifting it a little bit more toward the positive, that which can completely change the trajectory of your entire day. So before your feet hit the floor is simply to say thank you out loud.
I love that. We had a guest on, and I can't remember if she told us the story online or beforehand, Shannon, but she said she had started a gratitude practice because she used to start the day by jumping out of bed and hollering, "Oh, shoot," but that was not the word she used.
I don't know if that was on the
I
episode.
can't remember that, so I'm not even gonna call her name, so I'm not gonna call her out on it. But she said that was one of her
Yeah.
she said, "I don't even know why I did that." Like, but I would
Mhm.
start the day and that was how my day was, and she shifted one of her major practices. So that's why I'm giggling over here because I think about her every time now. I'm like, such a different mindset to start the day from. So I love that.
Yes. Yes. And
What's
that
number 2?
so first, exercise one takes about 2 seconds. Exercise number two is to set your intention at the beginning of the day to be more aware of your blessings as you go about your day. And this can be done while you're in the shower, while you're brushing your teeth. So it doesn't need to take any more time because you're doing it while you're already doing something else that you normally do every morning. And so it's self talk. It's just saying to yourself, I'm going to be more aware of my blessings today. I'm going to pay more attention to the good things going on in my life and less attention to the things that annoy me. That's it. And that doesn't take any more time. And I like to use the door frame of my bedroom as a reminder, like, have I set my intention yet? Because once I step out that door, then the dog needs to be fed, the emails, phone, like everything else piles in. Where in my room, that's my time where I get to really choose what I want to think about and be really intentional.
Ooh, I think I may create some artwork on my door frame coming out of my bathroom.
That's what I saw.
Because I was thinking, the bathroom's the first place I go, and I do my little routine in the bathroom, and I could
Mhm.
totally see some artwork above that door frame before I even step out of there. Like, I
I like
love
that.
that.
Yeah.
I want to just comment, just today that happened. Me telling that story of seeing the "You Are Loved" on the marquee. I was pulling from the Wisdom of the Divine Feminine deck of cards that was created. Let me tell y'all who it was created by because it's awesome, by Jenna Hahn and Jessica Richetti. And I pulled the card encouragement today. And it was all about looking for encouragement, being supported, all these beautiful things. So it had and one of the things it said in there was to look for encouragement. So I had set my intention to look for encouragement in the midst of this tough day today. And sure enough, I've been finding it everywhere. So I love what you're saying. So we set our intentions to be aware of our blessings for the day.
Yes. And
Mm.
that's where the brain starts to kick in and do its job for you, specifically through the reticular activating system, shortly known as the RAS. So that the RAS is a filtering system in our brain that helps us pay attention to the things that we want to pay attention to and less attention to the things that we don't want to. And we get to tell it what's important to us. And I think an example that many people can relate to is when you're in the market for a new car. You might not know exactly what you're looking for, but then as soon as you decide on the color, make, and model, all of a sudden you see that type of car everywhere. Now, the world didn't increase in that type of car. It's that you told your brain this is important to me, and now you notice them all over. So that's how gratitude works. By you're telling yourself this is important to me, pay attention to the blessings, and you will notice more. Similar to how you notice that encouragement, and because your mind is open to them, they're always there. But choosing to pay attention to them makes them more obvious, and simultaneously the things that might bother you are not even in your awareness anymore.
Yeah. And I love that. And I want to give some more depth to the layers of it, what you're saying, right? Because you're saying that when you're dealing with grief or you need to recenter, these are the things you can do. 5 things. I love that. 5 things within 5 minutes. They don't take that long. And you can leave out of that space better than you went into it, right? But for me, saying thank you is so big because it reminds me of when my mother was sick, right? And I stopped praying as much. I didn't know what to say. When my dad was sick, I felt like he would get better. My mom was sick, I knew she wasn't getting better. So I was quiet, right? And so I thank you, Lord. Thank you. And all I knew, if I don't know what to pray, I usually say thank you because all these things happen without power that I have within my own body, right? So I love that because it helps you in so many situations. Even if, for example, we have a lot of people that are we're talking about quiet quitting and resignation and jobs. And a lot of times you can have grief around that, right? So I myself am walking through that same thing, leaving my salary job. This is my last week. Super excited, right? So we can do another book and things that we're working on. But how do you say thank you in that space, right? I think that's a great place to start with relationships, spaces that you're in, or a situation that you might be dealing with, right? Especially we're talking about suicide.
Right. And that's when it can be the hardest, but
Yeah,
also the most powerful. So keeping
exactly.
it so simple,
Yeah,
you can say thank you.
yeah.
It might feel hard and it might not feel like it matches, but when you do it, it does help you to feel better.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say for the second thing, the setting the intention, right? When you feel like it doesn't match, how can we be a thermostat instead of a thermometer, right? I'm saying that, hey, I have power over my day and the energy that I'm going to bring into spaces or wherever I'm at, I'm going to set it to be more of what I want to see, and that's why for me, as somebody who has faith, I'm okay with also saying, yes, I can manifest things in my life because I know that I'm building roads to where I want to go instead of not intentionally setting where my mind goes. And so it kind of drifts. Or um, what was my second point going to be? I dropped it. But that's why I'm okay with it, because I know when you give energy to certain things, that's what ends up happening in your life.
I can't
Right.
wait to hear number 3 and 4 and 5. I'm
No,
like,
I'm really
"All right,
excited about
come
it.
on."
Yeah. Yeah.
Number three is my favorite, and that is to express appreciation every day for one person. And the reason this is so powerful is because the number one factor or number one predictor of happiness is our human relationships. So when you're expressing appreciation for somebody, it's one of the easiest and quickest way to foster closeness in a relationship. It does three wonderful things. It makes the other person feel good, it helps the closeness in the relationship, and it makes you feel good by expressing that appreciation. So one person every day, you can get really creative about it. It could be a quick 10-second text, or it could be a handwritten letter. And how nice is that to get a handwritten letter in the mail?
And what is it that you said express appreciation for at least one person? What was this? You said it's a quick way to foster closeness. In between that, what did you say?
It's the that our human relationships are the
Yes.
number one predictor of happiness. So any time that we spend fostering those relationships is time well spent. So with this, you're kind of doing two things at once. You're cultivating your closeness in a relationship and you're practicing gratitude. So two wonderful things in one simple exercise.
I love that because we talk about boundaries a lot, right? Hey, I need this. This is what I need in a situation. And what I know as a manager is it's really important to pour into the buckets of the people around you too. If you're always giving constructive feedback, always saying somebody needs to work on something, most people will get tired of that, right? So not that it has to be the same person for 7 days straight, but one person every day. The communication's not overwhelming. I appreciate what you do. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I just want to give a shout out to my first co-author, Dr. Sheila K. Collins, who's a guest and a friend of the show. She is fabulous at handwritten notes. I just have to
Mhm.
give her a shout out because she's really good at it.
Mhm.
I'm better at emails and texting gratitude to people, but I what you said, Peggy, about how wonderful it is to get a note like that. It really
Yeah.
is. It
Yeah.
really is. And I may add that to my list of things I want to improve on in
Mhm.
2023, just stating it for the world to know. No guarantees, but I'm going to work
Yeah.
on it.
And I was gonna say, I also think that you do a great job, at presence and moments, and hey, let's take space to celebrate you. I think you do great at that, Christine. So if I know you love incremental steps. If you want to do one every day, one person, I think it's great. But I think you do a good job.
Oh, I do the one every day. I'm just talking about the writing it handwritten. If I do one a
Mm.
month, I feel like that would be a good it's not going
But
to
are
be
you
one a
gonna send
day.
them out because
Yeah,
you don't like to go to the post office?
I know. What I'm
Maybe
going
it
to do
does
is
need to be a
write.
text. Wait, I lost you. What'd you say? Let's see if she comes back, Peggy.
Okay,
Give her a second. I know she's working on it. But I
sure.
think that's really important, especially because we talk about self-care and then community care. So building that, and then how it's the number one predictor of happiness. What does it look like when our relationships are not where we want them to be, right? How can we process in a moment and get back to that place so we can go back to that relationship that's so important and make sure we're operating in a healthy way that's building it towards the goals that we want to reach together, whether that's professional, whether it's personal and romantic, or even in a family, right? We have to continue to keep that open. And it's really difficult to do that if we don't process the emotions like you're talking about.
And I also like to stress that it's all relationships. So we might tend to
Hmm.
focus on the ones that are most powerful in our lives, but even strangers play a role in our happiness. And I love to say that there's no such thing as small talk. It all matters. And when we call it small talk, we think it's insignificant and then we don't want to do it. But it matters. It makes us feel connected to people and the world. So I like to mix it up, to send a text to an acquaintance and then express deep appreciation for someone who's there for you every day. But somehow, like mixing it up with all levels of relationships, it all matters, and everybody feels good knowing that they're appreciated.
I like that. And I like it also because of the workflow of it, right? If you reach out to somebody that's really close, we were talking about your best friend earlier. It reminded me of my best friend of 20 years. And that conversation might go a little bit deeper, right? Oh my goodness, thank you so much. And then here's a catch up or whatever else we would have been talking about. But if you have somebody that's not as close, it could be real quick, received, and then we're on about our day. And so for me, the communication doesn't have to be overwhelming. I like that.
I also
Right.
just
Yeah.
love how that builds connection. You
Exactly. Right.
know,
Yeah,
how
you
it
never know. Right.
when you authentically express appreciation, and Shannon knows this about me, I will do it for strangers or people I just met. And I agree with you, Peggy, about small talk. I'm a farmer's daughter, and a lot of people think talking about the weather is small talk, and we know with climate change and what's happening in our world today how it's not. But so many people used to dismiss it and say, oh, I don't want to talk about the weather. And I'm like, oh, I'm a little more connected to the earth and our food and the weather. And I just always think about that when I think about small talk. And yeah,
Right. I
so
really wish we could get rid of that phrase because
right.
Mm,
there really is no such thing. It all matters.
I love
Every
that.
Yes, it all matters.
Oh, okay.
so
What's number 4?
that's what I was about to ask.
Number four is the most difficult, but most powerful, I believe. And that, well, three is powerful too. But this one is to use your emotional pain as a trigger to practice gratitude. So what that means is allowing yourself to feel the pain, whether it's grief or betrayal, guilt, disappointment, feeling that, and then using that as a trigger to think about a silver lining in the awful situation, a lesson learned, or the underlying value. Sometimes it's hard to find a silver lining in really difficult, painful situations. So then what might be more helpful is to look for the underlying value. So, for example, with grief, you might be so grief stricken that it's nearly impossible to find a silver lining in your grief. So instead, look for the value, and the value is love. You wouldn't be feeling the grief if you didn't have that love. So then celebrate the love and find one way to show love to somebody else that day. So that's an example of using underlying value. Another
Mm.
time, the silver lining might be something that you can find. Recently, I had to take down 100 trees on my wooded property. Devastating. I love trees, but they're all dying in northern New Jersey, these ash trees. And my property was built for privacy decades ago. They planted all of these ash trees, and now they're all dead and dying, and we had to take them down. They were falling near the house. I was devastated, but the silver lining is that now I have a beautiful view of a sunset that I never even saw before over a mountain. I couldn't see it before. Now I love sunsets, I love mountains, and now I get both of this beautiful view that I didn't have before. So that's my silver lining in having the trees having cut down.
I love that, Peggy. I think about two things when you talk about this one. I think about when tragedy happens, how Mr. Rogers used to say, look to the helpers. So when you're in that pain or you're in that, we can look to that, kind of goes along the flow with that. And I also look for beauty. I when I am struggling or in pain, I'll like even snap a photo of a flower or the way the light's hitting the building or the sunset or the cloud, or I did that this morning. There was this cloud that was just gorgeous, and I didn't realize it until you said it, but that's a practice of mine. Like when I'm in pain or when I'm grieving, that I'll take a picture of something that to me is beautiful, or intriguing. And that's one of the ways that I give gratitude, is to like, oh my gosh, like, look at that.
Yeah, and very similar to how being grateful for things and training your brain to notice them and be aware of them, the same thing happens with awe and beauty. When you start to pay attention, you notice more and appreciate more of the beauty that's there all the time. But when we're focused on it and really paying attention to it, it helps us to see it and appreciate it even more.
Yeah. And for me, it's the way that I think about you, and Christine mentioned Sheila K. Collins, as the same as both of you talk about grief, right? I was in the physical wellness category with Sheila, and with Sheila, that was amazing. But for me, yours is mental, right? Like you work on five things that you can do in 5 minutes. For Sheila, I think about dancing and moving your body. And it's really useful, this number 4, about intentionally saying, hey, if this happens, do this, right? I might do it sometimes, but we talk about intentional wellness all the time. I wasn't intentionally saying, hey, when this happens, process it. Again, we're not skipping the pain, we're not ignoring the emotion that's coming through, but then let's also practice gratitude in that moment. That's really useful.
And when you do it even one time and it helps you to feel better, it makes you want to do it again.
Yeah.
And it allows you almost to have more, if you want to call it, courage to experience your deep grief, because you know that you're not going to get stuck there, because the last time you thought about one thing you were grateful for or a silver lining and it did help you to feel better. So
Yeah.
you know that you have it, that it's a tool that's accessible to you. And
Right.
so it helps us address our pain. Sometimes it allows us to go deeper and in processing our pain, but it also helps us provide hope that we're
Yeah.
not going to get stuck there, and that life
Exactly.
can feel good even in the midst of our pain.
And that's the biggest thing for me, right? If I say, I'm going to process, this situation has crazy details, right? But it also has really good details too. And so if I'm going to honor the space and process it, then I would hate to only ever look at the bad stuff and leave all the good stuff and all these difficult situations to the wayside. That would make it longer for me to get through, more difficult to let go, more difficult to process, you know? So that's why I just wanted to take the moment to go through these things, because I think it would be easy to say, hey, if I'm grieving or somebody passes away or a normal situation where we would think about it, these are relevant. I see these being so relevant to every part of life. Like you said, when you wake up to when you go back to sleep, you can do these in 5 minutes. What's the fifth one?
The fifth one is when your head hits the pillow at the end of the day, to reflect upon your day and think about two things that went well, two things that you're grateful for. And this is so powerful because we tend to bring into our sleep what we last thought about, talked about, looked at. That's why children have nightmares after they've just watched a scary movie right at bedtime. So we
Yeah.
can intentionally facilitate more restful sleep simply by thinking about some good things that went well. And that creates positivity. We get a nice dose of serotonin and dopamine in our brain that helps us to feel good and helps to relax the body. So that's all wonderfully powerful things that happen right at bedtime. But what really the magic happens the next day. So when you hold yourself accountable to this simple exercise, you'll go about your day noticing more good things because you know you're going to hold yourself accountable at bedtime. So they will become highlighted for you. It's like you bank them in your brain and see something or experience something wonderful happen, and you connect with it more as it's happening because you've highlighted it. But then you also pay attention to it more because you know you're going to hold yourself accountable at bedtime to be able to recall those two nice things that happened. And then the other neat thing is our brain can't tell the difference between living an event and remembering or visualizing an event. So we get to re experience something wonderful simply by recalling it.
Mm.
I love that practice. I'm instituting that tonight, just so y'all know.
And it's
Mhm.
technique to use at 3 o'clock in the morning when any type of worry thought pops up. It seems that if you're going to have any if you have worries of the day, they're going to wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And for many people, that's really hard to get back to sleep when you've got something on your mind, something
Yeah.
weighing heavily on your heart. If it's really something that you want to make sure that you're not going to forget, it's helpful to just keep a little pad of paper on your nightstand and jot it down and release it from your brain. But
Right.
then thinking about what you're grateful for is one way to help relax the body, and sometimes paired with deep breathing can help you get back to sleep much
Yeah.
more than continuing to think about that, which just spirals into negativity and then can feel really heavy at 3 o'clock in the morning with the lights out and nobody to talk to and you're just left with your own thoughts. It's a
Yeah.
really wonderful tool at 3 o'clock in the morning.
And that's why I like that it's two things that went well. What I've been doing at the end of the year is reevaluating the systems, right? Reevaluating my checklist. And at the end of the day, for me, I would write something that I learned. If I didn't write it that night, I would make sure to write it when I journaled the next morning. We talk about intellectual wellness, right, as one of the eight dimensions. For me, I want to substitute the lesson for things that went well because I think it would help people sleep better, right? For if I'm thinking about something I learned, now I want to think about a to-do list and what do I need to do to implement this and what's my next action step? And here we go on the rev of entrepreneurs never get to stop when instead it's, hey, what is the win? Let's rest, let's rejoice, let's go to sleep, and then we can get up and have a great day tomorrow.
Yes, yes, exactly. And
Thank you for that.
sure, and it pertains to everybody. So, as you just highlighted how how it's useful for the entrepreneur, for the
Right.
teenager, it might be ruminating over something that they think was silly that they said to somebody over and over. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. They think I'm dumb. It just stops all of that in its tracks and helps you think about something else that's more positive, and that helps you fall asleep better than ruminating over your own perception of something that you said that probably the other person did not give a second thought.
Right. And that's one of my favorite things is trusting that people are going to forget or that they're not as worried about it as you are. Like they probably don't even know what you're talking about when you try to come back and apologize and smooth it out, right?
Right, right. But it's on those moments when the light goes off and there's
Mhm.
nobody talking to us that we're left with our own thoughts at the end
Yeah.
of the day that it can all just come crashing in and produce anxiety, which ramps
Yeah.
up the nervous system when we want the exact opposite to happen. And that is done through gratitude.
Yeah.
Well, and I love that you give people 5 simple steps and that you really kind of have to have the other 4 because if you're not practicing that muscle of gratitude and that practice, that you might get to the end of the day and be like and didn't pay attention, right? Or didn't capture what you're grateful for. So I love those steps, Peggy, and I love yeah, I totally agree with you on this being a game changer. I know it has been in my own life. What are you up to that people can get connected with you and where do they find you? Tell our listeners how to connect with you to get more of your words of wisdom.
Sure. Well, I would love to offer everybody a free download, which is actually these 5 exercises. They can go to my website, drpeggydelong.com/grief, and that will bring you right to the page that has this as a download. So you can have all of them right clearly outlined for you, these 5 exercises.
Oh, that's so awesome. We'll put that in the show notes, listeners, and that way you can get connected. And I love that. Thank you for that gift to our listeners. That's awesome.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Yes, yes. So every week we talk about wisdom in action, right? Because we know it's not enough to just know all these great things, know the 5 things, but you don't do them. They're not going to help you, right, if you don't put them into action. What is your personal hashtag this week for your wisdom in action that you're doing around your spiritual wellness?
Oh boy. Well, it sounds so repetitive, but it's my favorite saying is gratitude heals. So
Mhm.
that to me embodies like everything that I do. So hashtag gratitude heals. And just a reminder that this very simple practice and whatever works for you, here are 5 wonderful things, but it doesn't have to be all of these 5. You could want to pick, one, like writing, expressing gratitude for somebody every day.
Yeah.
Um, but it heals our mind, it heals our bodies. So I just love the phrase gratitude heals. So that's
Mhm.
what it would be for me.
I love that. Mine is hashtag what went well because I'm going to change that at the end of the day from the lesson to 2 things that went well. What about you, Christine? What's your wisdom in action this week?
Ooh, I'm over here thinking about it. Because I like both of those, the
Yeah.
gratitude heals and hashtag what went well.
Mhm.
Um, I think mine is going to be hashtag notice the good.
Mhm.
Because going through a pretty tough situation and it's easy to see what's not working well. So I'm going to notice the good along the same lines of, noticing the blessings, noticing the angels, noticing the people that are just being amazing, and really pay attention to that because I do have such gratitude, which I do want to give a shout out, y'all. My dad is in Methodist Central in Dallas, and their staff
Mm.
is incredible. It is
Good.
really one of the best hospitals that I've ever had the privilege to witness, a staff that is just so loving and caring. And so
Good.
that's what I want to do. Is what went well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like that helps. That's helped me in this year. And there may be things that you want to change, especially as you go from working for other people to working for yourself. That's a big goal that people have, right? So, um being grateful and being mindful of what's going good, even in frustrating situations or things that might be taking longer than you expected them to, or expectations that you need to change. I can't state it enough because, again, just like you said with your hashtag, it may feel like, oh, it might be redundant or it might sound cliche, but it is so important. It has helped you through the hardest days of your life. And that's how we get to stay here and, be healed and healthy for ourselves and for our communities because there's a lot of people affected. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Peggy, we are so grateful to be connected to you, and thank you for
Yes.
your story and your books
Yes.
and your light. I have one more question because I know we're running out of time. I wanted to hear a little smidge about these bracelets. Like,
Oh, I
Oh,
did
where
want to
can
know
people
about the
get the
bracelets.
bracelets and what are they?
sure. They are gemstone bracelets. They all have a mental health or inspirational background. Some I make just specifically for grief. And it's lovinabracelet.com. And everything is infused with positivity. I have a burning candle while I make them. They're all made by me. And they're just really special. My favorite is Gratitude Heals bracelet.
Of
And
course.
it
Yeah.
gives a nice description of the power of gratitude. Each of those bracelets has the gemstones with one metal bracelet, one metal bead. And then as your eye is drawn to the metal bead during the day, it's just a reminder to stop what you're doing and think about one thing that you're grateful for. So by the end of the day, you may have paused 10 times, thought of 10 nice things, and that helps to implement the practice of gratitude on a busy day.
Yay.
I
Uh,
love that.
Connecting art with healing and grief. Oh my gosh, we're going to connect you with Dr. Sheila K. Collins too,
Yeah.
because y'all have a lot to talk about.
Sounds
So,
Yeah.
great.
Thank you
Wonderful.
so much for bringing your wisdom, bringing your light. I I don't know about you, Shannon, but I feel so much better from when we
I do feel
started
better.
this conversation.
That's a good
And
point.
thank you for that. Thank
Thank you
you
for
for your
having
work
me.
in the world. We're
Of
grateful.
course.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
Oh my goodness, I needed that today.
A lot going on.
Whew.
And it's I think it's perfect at the end of the year, right? 96 episodes. We've been talking about a lot, and it can be really easy to say, "Oh, it always sounds like unicorns and butterflies." And I know we still talk about grief and
Right?
gratitude, but to really give space to it, I think was
Right?
great.
Right? I think it's beautiful. Yeah, it really is. Because, we didn't say it on air, but we often, I often hold out my hands and say we're holding both the grief and the gratitude at the same time as we walk through this world. And
Yeah.
so, thank you. Well, my friend,
It's
we're
about that
wrapping
time.
up.
For
We're
our last
wrapping up the
episode of the
year.
year, I know.
Right? So for our regular listeners, we are taking the next 2 weeks off to give
Yes.
ourselves a break. And we will put links to previous shows and to some of our guest shows. Watch our social media.
Mhm.
If we invite you, if you haven't already, to please like and subscribe. If you've made it to this part of the podcast, we really, that does help us. We
Yeah, it does.
appreciate it. And if you love our show, leave us a review, and just get connected with us. We would love to be connected. If you have an idea for a show, if you have somebody you want to recommend, head on over to womenconnectedinwisdom.com and check in with us, connect with us, and we look forward to talking to you.
Yes, yes, and we have other stuff coming for you guys. It's the
Oh, yes.
beginning of the year, so we talked about writing it down. We talked about setting intentions. We'll be having our second Connected in a vision board party that's going to be online. So again, when you watch the social media, look for that information if you're interested in getting your goals together with us, and we'll get those things set up for you.
Right. And in January, we're kicking off our Women Connecting Wisdom community with an expert class about setting goals and visioning for the new year. So that's also happening. So, yeah, y'all check it out. Let us know. And, you know, we are rooting for you. We
Yeah, we
just
are.
hope that you have an incredible holiday season,
Yeah.
that wherever you are and whatever you're going through, that know that you are loved and connected. And
And yes, yes. In the meantime, be well, be wise, be whole. We'll see you next year.
we'll see you next